What's up, homies? What's up, homies? What's up, homies? Welcome to the Knowledgeable Homeowner Podcast. We pick the brains of industry pros to unlock the trade secrets of homeownership. Our mission is simple: to turn everyday people into knowledgeable homeowners. What's up, homies? I'm Sturdy Joe, and this is the Knowledgeable Homeowner Podcast. On this episode, I have Darryl Knight with me from Front Porch Flora. What's up, Darryl? How are you?
What's going on, man? How are you?
You got dirty hands, dirty boots in the garage. Why don't you take a second and explain to the people why you come in here with dirty hands and dirty boots? That's part of your normal life. Introduce yourself. Tell them what you do.
So my name is Darryl Knight, and I do custom flower pots this time of year. We do like the winter greens, lots of like holiday installations. My biggest issue right now is that it gets dark at 4. So
Yeah,
I am out with a headlamp and trying to get it done so everybody can have the decorations during the holiday season. So.
Nice. So live planters, decorations, but plants, like actual legitimate
plants. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
How did you get into that? What's the backstory to this business?
So I spent every summer growing up, I was doing landscaping. I started working for a company called SK Complete Landscaping. They're still in business now. They're like 40 years in. And I got very fortunate because they're now like family. They treat me like their son.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I was fortunate in the sense that I really learned how to do things the right way. Mm-hmm. So with that, I then spent every summer from like 12 to 22 working those jobs, and as soon as I got out of high school, it was basically full time. I went to Farmingdale, got a degree in horticulture, but most of what I know is really on the job learning. So from there, I had a brief hiatus where I wasn't doing any landscaping, and then I started Front Porch Flora in 2020. And then, so I had Front Porch Flora going. We were just going to do the flower pots originally. And then 2 years ago, so 2 years in, I started noticing a lot of my customers, they saw that we knew a lot about plants, and they had a landscaper. Landscaper basically just cuts the grass, but they wanted somebody who knew more about plants to do like the design part, and also make sure you don't put like full sun plants in a shady spot.
Yeah.
So at first I was turning the business away, or referring it to people that I trusted in the industry.
Yeah.
And then I decided to add it on. So we've now added that on.
Yeah. So you mentioned you have a background in landscaping. You've been in landscaping essentially your whole life. I think it's a common misconception because there's various degrees of landscaping companies. Landscaping is more than just grass. Landscaping, you're saying you're taking care of flower beds, plants, privacy shrubs. Like that's the side of landscaping that I'm
into,
about.
yeah. So I won't actually, I'm not doing any grass cutting.
Yeah. So that's that's different landscaper. That's a landscaper who's got 100 grass accounts, they're blowing them out. And I had this experience too. I really like my landscaper, and just when I saw their list of stuff, they touched on like cleaning up flower beds. Yeah. But I don't really think they got into like what you're doing, installs, taking care of it.
Yeah.
So you said a word, and this is a good word, horticulture.
Yeah.
What is horticulture? And you have a degree in horticulture.
Yeah, it's plants. It's like the study of plants. So if anybody wants to go to Farmingdale, Farmingdale has a program for horticulture, landscape design. You're going to learn about, you're going to take botany classes, entomology classes, which is like, so you're really studying like the science of how plants work, insects, which can really mess up your plants.
Yeah, right.
Which I've been going through the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And
is there like a bug epidemic going on right now with like certain plants? Because I worked with an arborist who pointed out to me, we were going up like the William Floyd Parkway, and there was like a certain beetle that was killing all the trees over there. Is there anything like that where it's a specific bug?
Right now, the Chinese lanternfly is crushing people.
So the lanternfly is killing. I know they talk about eating like the grape orchards, the grapevines and stuff. So you're talking about regular plants too?
Yeah, they're not very selective. So they actually leave, so their feces leaves like a black powder coating. It's like a rust that coats the plant. So they have piercing, sucking mouth parts like a mosquito, right?
Okay.
Except the people.
Yeah.
Right? So they pierce into the plant, they suck out the juices, and then they're basically shitting all over your plants.
Yeah, and sealing them in.
Yeah, and so what it's doing is it's aside from the functionality of how a leaf works, it's also blocking out sunlight. So for instance, I did a planting job in May of this year, and I went back to that same HOA in August, and of course I'm going to go and check on the job that I just did and make sure everything looks right. And I'm looking at it, and it looks like something happened. It looked almost like there was no water, but when you start looking closely, you can see that black powder all over every plant over there. And so they got on a treatment schedule, and hopefully next year some of those plants will recoup. They probably need a little bit of fertilizer.
So I'm so glad that you brought up lanternfly, because I'm an avid hater of the lanternfly. They're the most annoying bug ever. They're creepy and gross. Yeah. I did not expect this podcast to go, but I honestly might spend the next 40 minutes talking about them because I am obsessed with killing them. I love crushing lanternflies because there's I guess they don't fly right. They're like dumb. And the wind carries them. So when I'm doing home inspections and there's a house with really windy spots, there's like 100 lanternflies.
Yeah.
So I go on a stomping spree.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I was helping out my neighbors.
No, yeah. And actually, I'm not really certain where I heard this, but it's kind of like, I guess, going around where everybody kind of knows that the word is, if you see them, kill them.
Yeah.
And there's not really many things ever that it's like, all right, if you see one, kill it.
Yeah. Yeah, like everybody's on the same side. Like,
yeah.
We're all, every presidential candidate agrees.
Yeah.
Let's just crush the lanternfly. That's so great. I'm so happy.
If I was president, I'd probably get
that's what we're going after. That's what, I'll be your VP. We'll go. Nice. We're annihilating lanternflies.
Vote for us.
So they're impacting specific plants, or they're not selective, you said, so it could be pretty floral things that you guys are setting up, vegetable gardens, anything?
Yeah, it's I really don't see anything that they're not going after, which is probably why it's like you see one, kill it, because they're just going in and breeding and like I said, just destroying crops or gardens.
Everything.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that bad. I remember them talking about it, like the past few years it came up, and I remember last year I saw two in my yard, and I chucked a shoe at it immediately, and I was like, this is great. And I remember them talking about, like, if it could devastate the North Forks wineries. That's what I remember hearing, which makes sense now. I thought that was like the plant that they liked. And then going into this season, as a home inspector, to get close to the siding, I got to dig through people's bushes. And once the spring rolled around, I started seeing like thousands of the nymphs. And I had to I was like, that kind of looks like the lanternfly, but it's not it. I had to Google it, and they're like, no, that's just in the next seasons of lanternfly. Yeah. So then it became on site immediately. You just started eradicating them. But it's sometimes it's extremely overwhelming, and I see them covering plants. So when they're covering the plants, they're piercing it, they're eating it, and then they're shitting all over it. Yeah. Wow, that is crazy. So it affects what you're doing, because that's kind of why I would bring a professional in, is because I will not do a good job of taking care of my plants. Right.
Well, and so like you were saying, if it's on a vegetable garden, that's another issue, because it drastically changes what you're going to treat with. And that's just one bug. Aphids are another bug that are trying to put me out of business. So,
yeah.
Same kind of situation too. Like same type of feeding habits. Mm-hmm. They're not leaving the shit everywhere, but they're just reproducing so much that they're destroying.
They're thriving.
Yeah. And so part of my business, I'm putting together, with the planters, I'm putting together something that I want you to enjoy the whole season. So they're expected to go into decline. Like your fall plants now are starting to really look like shit. Mm-hmm. So that's why we change it out for the winter stuff, aside from it being kind of like seasonally appropriate. But going back to the aphids, I'll have my customers call me and say, like, hey, this doesn't look right. So I always encourage them to send me a photo, because I want to see, sometimes it's just they're not watering enough, even though I leave watering instructions. Yeah, some people just don't realize.
Yeah.
But I usually just zoom in on the photo, and if I see the aphids on there, then I know it's not me. Or I'll go to the house and they're on the underside of the leaf.
What can somebody do in that situation to save their plants?
So you could take a hose and just blast them and get them off.
This is for the aphids.
This is for the aphids.
What does an aphid look like? How do you know?
They're very tiny. They're green. So aphids and whiteflies, when they really start to get onto plants, it almost looks like sawdust on the plant. So if
Because
the plants
they look like the sawdust, or what they're leaving behind looks like
what
sawdust?
they're leaving behind.
Oh, because they're chewing up your plants.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it looks like somebody like almost took a handful of sawdust and threw it in there. And so usually when you see that, like it's already kind of becoming too late.
Oh, damn.
But I mean, I could show you pictures. I could send you some photos.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll post. We'll plug it in there. Yeah, let the people know.
But I mean, yeah. So aphids, whiteflies, they're usually destroying my summer stuff, and then obviously now the Chinese lanternflies.
So there's not like a pesticide or something we could put down. Like there's really nothing we can do to kill them.
There are topical treatments that you could put down. Like I know malathion is a kill on contact, but that's a chemical.
And this is something that like a professional has to like you'd have.
Yeah,
I can't just.
I know you have Mosquito Guido on here. Like that's a good option. SK Complete Landscaping, the company that I worked for growing up. They're all good. I don't do that. That type of work.
Yeah.
Mostly because, one, if it's going to be a chemical, you need somebody with a pesticide license.
Yes, yeah, it's a totally different ballgame.
Those aren't anything I would want to mess with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I didn't realize that how much of those bugs can affect something. Like in my side, like my perspective is it's design. This is a design thing. It's a component we're putting in front of the house. You put it there. I water it. It stays around.
It should work.
Yeah, it should work. Yep. And then you're running into issues of it. So to roll it back a little bit, because I'm just intrigued with your business because you have this really, really deep understanding of what you do, and your business is very niche. You do planters in pots.
Yeah.
Right. So that's so explain that. Like, what is a typical customer of your company? Like, what are they getting? What's the seasonal plotting? Like, what type of plants are they getting?
So my typical customer, usually for the front stoop, is 2 planters, and they're doing 4 seasons. So first week of April is usually when we're trying to get out our first set of arrangements. Sometimes the frost will kind of mess us up on that, but
especially like you get like a random freeze in late May or something.
That's why you can't really do tropicals until you can kind of guarantee that you're not going to get a frost overnight. But so in April we'll get out our spring arrangements, and then obviously next season is summer, and then a lot of customers will do the front for the summer, and they'll also start doing planters in the backyard, especially the pools usually have planters around the back.
Decorate, barbecues and stuff.
Then we'll transition back to fall. That's kind of a mix between, most people aren't doing the back in the fall, like unless you enjoy kind of like hanging out in the cool weather. So they just kind of stick with the front.
Yeah.
This year we added pumpkin displays.
Yeah, those went crazy. So that was, I've seen them. I've seen a lot of those.
So that was.
Those are real pumpkins?
Those are real pumpkins. Damn. Yeah.
And so everything you do, you bring to the house complete.
Yep.
And then when it's time to change it out, you take the old ones away.
So what we do is we charge a fee to remove, unless it's a customer that's hiring us, like, because now we're doing the Christmas stuff. So if you're having us do a Christmas display as well, like we do Christmas trees, so we literally put like actual cut Christmas trees on your porch, decorate the base to look like a present.
Oh, sick.
And we do planters as well. So if somebody's doing that, then they're not going to pay for the removal. We're just going to remove the old, put in the new, and then for the Christmas stuff, it's all the removal is covered as well.
Yeah. Okay. So to go back to that question about you bringing the plant there already grown. Yeah. You as a horticulture professional expert, you're growing these plants at your house.
I am not. No, so I go to different greenhouses,
and they're already
throughout the island.
Yeah, because that sounds like you would have a full-time job of like a greenhouse or something growing plants. Okay. Yeah. You could though. Like you understand how to grow plants and to keep them alive.
I could. Yeah. It's a full-time job just to manage the greenhouse.
It's worth it more to just to pay them to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, but you understand watering plants and getting them to grow, and you go to people's houses who you're adding to their patio, their front door display, but they probably, somebody in that market might already have some very pretty landscaping going on, and also too as a landscape designer.
And now a word from our sponsor, the Ryan Anthony Head Start Fund. This foundation is focused on providing alternative career paths for young people other than just college. If you want to learn more about what they got going on and some updates, you can check them out at lookwhomadeit.org. Now back to the show.
What mistakes do you see people make with the other plants that are in front of their house, whether it be watering or feeding, what are some tips you can give to homeowners to prevent issues with that?
One of the things, if you're going to try and do like a professional landscape, we really should have an irrigation system, because I think it starts to become too much to maintain with everything else that you got to do for the house. So that's something
so they can add a zone to their sprinkler system of like a drip line?
It could be a drip line or just missed heads.
Missed heads.
I wouldn't do gear drives for what we're talking about. Gear drives is typically for the lawn.
Yeah.
But something like that ought to work. And that's something that we could add. Like we could just add a few heads to a zone if there's enough pressure. Same thing that they do the little drip lines that come up through the planters. So that's a great way to have like a kind of a worry-free planter.
Yeah.
I think that answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good. Yeah, that's solid. The irrigation's important because you got to water it.
Yeah.
But plant to plant, some plants need more water, some plants need less water. Yeah. Is there a general rule of thumb, like is it just do your research, or is there certain types of plants, like a flower might need more, or this kind of anything like that?
So this is kind of where I think hiring somebody who is knowledgeable about plants will help, because if you're putting in a tropical is going to suck up a lot of water. So if you look at like a New Guinea impatient, it's kind of a great example, because you could see them wilt completely to the ground, and then as soon as you give them water, like an hour later, they're standing back up again. So if you're going to do like a tropical, like I have one customer in Comac, she likes to do tropical. She has a waterfall in the back. It's beautiful. So she'll do all that stuff. So that stuff is going to tend to need more water. Whereas you have other plants like a boxwood or a skip laurel, they don't really like too much water. They really like to be in that sweet spot. So a lot of plants, they want water. They don't want to dry out, but they need good drainage.
Yeah.
Typically, if you're going to have issues with your landscape, aside from the design part, where that's kind of like how it looks, I think the other side is really, you want to know what sunlight conditions are going to work and what the soil is like. Because if you have a drainage issue, you're really going to have a problem with how good your landscape looks.
Okay, so if I wanted to revamp my front and I wanted to add all sorts of different plants, you're talking about the soil. What are some soil conditions that are problematic, and what are like the ways when we go to install the plants? What are the ways they correct that?
Clay is really like
clay's bad.
Worst case scenario, yeah. So depending on how hard packed the clay is
that because clay has bad drainage?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's just standing water.
And it'll rot the
not
roots?
a lot, yeah.
Oh,
So not a
that's a
lot
good
of
guess.
plants are going to want to sit in water.
Okay.
They want it to drain out. So exactly like you said, it's going to rot the roots.
Okay. And so like when the install is happening, excavate all the bad soil out.
If it's possible to excavate all the bad soil out, that's your best bet. That is not always possible, so the next thing is to pitch the water. So you're kind of, when it rains, you're allowing the water to move out, so it's not sitting exactly where you are or where your plants are.
So we like the same way if I have a patio, I want to pitch it away from the home, we can pitch the substrate that we can't remove to flow away, so
Exactly.
it's not
Yeah.
pooling. So even though it's not the top layer of soil, it's the impermeable layer of soil where the water flows
Yep.
out. Wow.
And sometimes it might take like something like what we've done is like a post hole digger or an auger, and you go down. So if you could kind of pull the water away and then pull it,
Make a sump.
and then you exactly
Make like an in-ground
and
sump.
see if you can get to sand, and then do that a few times. You'll pull the water away from your plants, and it'll go into those spots. Because if you have clay, you're certainly not starving for water.
Yeah, because it's sitting there.
holding it.
Okay, so if
Yeah.
somebody was DIYing their own garden and they're having issues growing it, and they're like, I'm watering the crap out of it and it's not going, and if we fast forward, you go there and you identify it's clay. Like, how could the homeowner go in their garden and figure out that that's the problem?
Really, all you need is a shovel.
Yeah.
Because if you start digging in clay, you're gonna know it. It's so much more difficult, right? And
So soil clay.
Yeah.
It's not like clay that you get from
No.
the store. Like, how do you identify clay? Color, texture?
color for sure. Sometimes clay is like, it's actually gray in color.
Okay.
And so if you think about, if you ever imagine like using a shovel, usually you take the shovel and it's like goes all the way into soil. With clay, you might penetrate like an inch and a half.
Oh, wow.
And-
It's that hard.
Oh yeah, yep. Another issue you see too with bad soil, and not necessarily clay, but new construction.
Okay.
So you
RCA?
have a new construction home, there's going to be a lot of RCA around it, and there's going to be a lot of compaction because you're using these big heavy machines.
Yeah, and they're just pounding it down. Yeah.
Right, so around...
And the RCA is made because it's big and small rocks put together. It's made to get tight.
They get tight, yeah.
It is amazing, like, we go to these construction yards where guys are storing their outdoor equipment and everything's RCA'd, and you'll get like a weed here and there. Like the weeds can't even grow in the RCA. And I didn't know if RCA is recycled concrete.
Yeah.
A lot of concrete has a ton of chemicals in it to harden it. So I didn't know if maybe it was just because it's straight up toxic and it's poisoned, but there's no room for it to grow, and RCA is just you don't like plant plants in RCA is pretty much.
No, you definitely don't plant plants in RCA.
Yeah.
So here's where the part where I think plants are kind of amazing because they will find a way to get in there.
Yeah.
It's just going to take longer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did some paving and we would see trees blast through asphalt. Plants growing through asphalt.
Yep.
And then not like they were in the crack and they grew, like they blew through the asphalt.
Yeah. So I actually cut down a walnut tree at my house and a couple of oaks. And their roots, my driveway's a mess, but it's just very old. So the asphalt, one of the roots underneath the asphalt just decided, like, I guess because the tree is gone,
we're going to grow a new one.
It's going to redirect. And all of a sudden I had like a pimple in my driveway.
Yep.
And so I pulled it up and there's a root trying to push up through there. So I thought that was kind of cool.
We would pave driveways and some of it we'd have to go back if we didn't, like for like flips and for all these quick jobs where we didn't really do the prep. They were like, the RCA is good. It's been there the whole time. But we would just pay on top of it. Yeah. And the plants would grow right through. It's unbelievable. So where you don't want them to grow, they're extremely resilient. But then when we want them to grow in the spots they need to, they'll be a little bit. All right, so bad soil can make it difficult to grow. Over or underwatering can make it difficult to grow. We talked about different plants and how you would really need a specialist to truly tell you what cycles to get on. But are there any, what plants do you prefer for the pots that you put them in, or maybe for an indoor plant that maybe a homeowner that wants to get into, like starting a garden or having decorative plants? Are there any like pretty easy, hard to kill plants for a beginner?
So, I mean, the number one, I think, most bulletproof plants that I've seen are hostas and yucca.
The hostas go crazy.
Hostas are crazy. Yeah. Although if you have deer, don't even bother. It's like
they're just chewing on them.
Yeah. They will stand in the middle of the road to eat hosta.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Yuccas, on the other hand, they won't eat.
What's a yucca? I don't know.
It's like it almost looks like aloe.
Okay.
It's just like a spiky. They're not a friendly plant. So like to touch them.
Oh, okay.
There's nothing friendly about them. They do produce a flower that comes up on a tall shoot. I've seen people eat them.
Nice.
But I wouldn't suggest.
Yeah.
I think it's not for me.
Yeah, I would doing heavy construction. You get some of these guys who grew up in different conditions, and they would definitely like pick berries off of bushes and shouldn't eat them. And I was like, okay, that's
It's not for me.
Yeah, not going to do that one.
I'll go to the grocery store.
Yeah. Okay, so there are some easier to grow plants, harder to kill plants that you get into. Is there any with your planters? What's your like go-to favorite one to install?
That's tough.
Yeah, you got a lot of faves.
I feel like every season.
Who's in the Hall of Fame? Who's in the Front Porch Flora Hall of Fame for planters? Like which species?
All right, so Million Bells is like it's form of Calibrachoa. It's just it almost looks like a miniature petunia. Okay. And I don't know if I'm speaking your language.
No, I love when people geek out. Greek. This is the place. Yeah, that's fine. I want you to geek out here, dude.
I really like those. They do get beat up by the aphids the past couple of years. And I've been replacing them for people just because I don't want them to think that I suck.
Yeah, I know.
There's nothing much I could do about it.
Now, is that based on the appearance of it alone? Like, what about it to you as you're a plant guy? This is your life. Like, what about it to you makes like that one a solid plant?
So I like the plants that like cascade over the edge. Okay. So there's usually like a theory, I guess you could call it. For planters, I usually say filler. It's like thriller, filler, and spiller. So thriller would be like your centerpiece. Filler is like around the middle section, and then spiller is the one that cascades over. So I'm drawn to the ones that cascade over.
Okay. It's just out of a preference. So you just like the look of it? Or
Yeah. Like even at my house, I did like a boulder wall around my my mailbox. I did it at my last house, same thing, like a little boulder thing around my mailbox. And then I like to put the spillers, like creeping phlox. Right now I have creeping Jenny. I don't know why all the plants are so creepy, but
there's so good names for it.
So those plants, I think I'm kind of drawn to. But that one in particular that I mentioned, it flowers like pretty heavily. So I think that's like a good look. I mean, even on its own, it's a good look.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Cool. I appreciate that. Now with taking care of plants, as somebody, I'm not a green thumb. I think one day, maybe when I'm old man, I feel like I'm gonna have like a nice garden and my like front garden's going to be nice. I'm just not there yet.
Yeah.
So I really don't, because I don't know how to do it. Fertilizers and like stuff to add to it. Is there certain things that we should be adding to the soil or like peat moss? Like what are the different things somebody could add to their plants to make them grow better?
There's a million different things that you could add. If you're looking for potted plants, you want to like real light soil.
Okay.
For plants that are in the ground, you can do much heavier. And they'll retain more moisture like that. But for a potted plant, because it's going to get watered every day, you don't want it to be like
you don't want it to
soggy, like we talked about with the clay.
Yeah.
And you can kind of get that with topsoil. But as far as stuff to add, a friend of mine works at a nursery out east, out in Belmore, and she's a big fan of bumper crop. She likes to mix that in. I did that earlier this year, and I liked it a lot. That's just you could buy it by the bag.
Cool.
Peat moss is a good way to lighten up the soil. So if you do feel like you are having a drainage issue, or you're holding water in a certain area, peat moss is a great way to lighten it up. They sell perlite, those little white pellets. You can go to Lowe's. I think it's called number 4 mix. You can mix that into the soil. You just want to kind of like make it so that the plant can push roots nice and easily, but also the water can pass through. Yeah, without holding too much.
Yeah, the more you get into detail about it, the more it makes it clear that, it's not a one answer fixes everything. There's not a one-step fix to everything. It's conditional. It's this is the conditions of this situation. It's either draining well, it's not draining well.
Yeah.
We have to take all those facts into consideration, and then we have to make improvements based on that. So that's really why, if you're going to spend a lot of money on a garden, it is. And that's why, honestly, with the Front Porch Flora, it's such a solid alternative to going crazy with having planters. Like, it's a good start. Like, you're bringing the plants, you just got to water them.
Yeah.
You did all the work of getting it in there.
Yeah.
And then if it dies, we're going to roll into the next season's ones anyway. So I feel like for somebody
most
like
likely
me,
they're going to start dying
this is a solid service for somebody like me, because it's like, if I drop the ball, it's only going to be till next season. Then we'll have some nice new pretty ones. Yeah.
That's it. If you like, if you just like, be like, I like pretty plants and flowers, and like, I'm your guy. If you are really into gardening, I'm probably not a good service for you.
Yeah.
Because one, I'm going to be taking away what you enjoy doing, and two, you may want to play with it and try different things. I mean, I like to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's cool, man. I really appreciate it. So I think we're getting close on time here. Was there any other bits of information, tips, or anything even about yourself, your company, that you wanted to drop?
You know what? This just crossed my mind. So this is, if you do have and this kind of relates to your business as well. Like, if you're having a water issue in your basement, do not put one of those drain holes I was just talking about. Don't put a drain hole right next to your foundation. Because you're really just your water will always go to the path of least resistance. Yeah. So you're actually pulling the water towards your foundation.
Nice.
So if you do have like a drainage issue, pitch the water away from the house. So if you're doing like a foundation planting, you want to kind of pitch the water away from the house. And if you need to put one of those holes in, or you want to try, then that would be my suggestion. Do it away from the house.
That's awesome. That's super relevant to this. I am in the world of building science. Yeah. And in building science, we look at the house as a whole, because we can solve one problem, and if we don't realize it, we can actually make other things worse. And now it even goes into landscaping, because I look at landscaping as drainage and grading. That's why when you talked about the substrate, it makes perfect sense to me. We want the water to roll away from it. And in the same sense, somebody might do that kind of sump, and now we're just bringing the water closer to the foundation. So it's even when we're planting, we got to think about what's going on inside the house. Yep. Unbelievable. Awesome, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
You guys, you want to share your contact info, company info, Instagram?
Yes, our Instagram is Front Porch Flora. Same on Facebook. And you can call us at 631-533-9727.
Sweet, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Pleasure having you on.
Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time, stay knowledgeable.